Like, think about it. Imagine me going to a major buyer and say, I have this great idea for a painting. I haven't made it yet. Interested?
Yeah.
Much harder than, look at this painting.
Yeah.
It's so good, right? So I think having something concrete, a definitive piece of work that they can see is going to be a lot more helpful. It doesn't matter about me and my sales tactics. I could be the greatest showman or salesman on earth, but it's about the project. And so to go to a film festival, for it to be accepted in a film festival, for you to have all your legal I's dotted and T's crossed is significant. It gives you an air of legitimacy that maybe you didn't think you had before that.
Today's conversation is with one Dave Stern. Now, Dave is an incredible entertainment lawyer, a friend and a guiding light in my career. That this conversation originally started as how to make a movie from A to Z. But in reality, that can't be covered in a short podcast episode. So it was a little bit more A to C plus, if you will. That said, it is geared towards the emerging filmmaker, someone who is looking to get their first professional project off the ground. Dave mentions in the conversation mostly the independent filmmaker looking at a budget of sub $5 million, which still is a significant amount of money. However, we dive into everything of how to make a movie. What's the high-level bird's eye view to understand what steps that you need to take to get a project off the ground? Why is it important to incorporate a company? Securing and transferring rights, legal rights to a story, financing opportunities. If you get private investors, how do you talk about the ROI of a film or return on investment, attachment agreements, seeking talent, and lastly, the impact of AI in our industry. A caveat, this was filmed during the 2023 SAG and WGA strikes, which had a significant portion of that collective bargaining agreement about AI and the future of its use in film. A little about Dave. Dave is an entertainment lawyer who provides creative and practical solutions for complex matters in the area of sports, entertainment, and commercial corporate law. In particular, Dave's practice focuses on audiovisual production, distribution, exploitation, films, TV series, digital media projects, brand licensing, influencer representation, and commercial transactions. Dave also represents labels, brands, producers, and artists in negotiating of recording, management, and publishing agreements. He's also involved in establishing optimal corporate structuring for his clients. Dave has a unique sports background where he previously worked in the legal departments of both the Oakland Raiders and Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, where he was regularly involved in software licensing, the protection and enforcement of intellectual property rights, sponsorships, contests, promotions, collective bargaining, athlete-player contracts, broadcasting, and distribution. Let me take a breath there. He has counseled 36 film and television projects, including Blackberry, directed by Matt Johnson, starring Jay Baruchel and Glenn Howerton, Seven Veils, a TIFF 2023 hit, written and directed by Adam McGoyan, starring Amanda Seyfried, Rebecca Lydiard, and Douglas Smith, and Humane, Caitlin Cronenberg's latest film, also featuring Jay Baruchel, Emily Hapsher, and Peter Gallagher. Just a couple of the many wonderful projects he has worked on. This is a great conversation for it. Now, this conversation is great for anyone who is looking to start their own projects or production company. Dave, I can speak from firsthand experience, is someone who's incredible not only at his job, but as a human being, as a friend, as a mentor. I don't think I'd be where I am today without Dave. I am so appreciative of all of his help and guidance along the way, and I hope this conversation does the same for you. Without further ado, this is How to Make a Movie with Dave Stern. There's such a broad range of what we want to dive into.
Yeah.
Because you are such a talented lawyer and also incredible friend who has helped provide a tremendous amount of guidance in my life, that this is half the reason we want to have you on the show, is to be able to help others.
Thank you so much. I'm honestly very honored and happy to be considered. You've been such a great friend to me, and I'd love to help in any way that I can.
Look at us Canadians, just tooting each other's horns.
And just saying sorry all the time.
It's just
Yeah, the best.
Everyone's always kind of thought at some point, maybe not necessarily every person in the world, but there's an incredible story and I want that story to be told. And from a film and TV perspective, it can often feel like a black box of how to go from point A to Z. Z? What do Canadians say? I don't even know.
I say Z. Is that weird?
No, I've run.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah.
We're multi-border.
That's right. That's right.
But I want to also highlight a little bit about you as an individual. How did you end up in the path to sport and entertainment law?
Well, I think part of it is predetermined. I mean, I felt like I was destined to be a sports agent. I went to law school just almost knowing that that was going to happen somehow or another, somewhere or another. And I certainly market myself as a sports and entertainment lawyer. We'll get to what I do in a sec, but most of my practice is on the film and television side, representing talent and production companies make feature films and television series. And culturally and from a skill set standpoint, it is completely different than the world of sports. So while it seems like this was always my path, from where I wanted to end up as a sports agent to where I actually learned that I really wanted, which is here in the world of sports, of film and television, it's almost night and day. So I went to law school to be a sports agent, and as a result, didn't pay much attention to a lot of law school courses, and as a result, did not get any interviews for any jobs. And I was kind of frustrated by that process, and I figured, you know what, I'm just going to make my own career path. I love sports. I love the NFL, specifically the Raiders. So in law school, I just cold called 1-800-Raiders and demanded to speak to their legal team, which they initially laughed off and then patched me through. And several phone interviews later, I moved to Oakland to work for the Raiders in their legal department. And I did that in my second and third year of law school, and then did the same thing after law school with the Maple Leafs. I'm from Montreal, so I'm not from Toronto. I have no connection.
That must have hurt you.
I'm not a Habs fan, so it was actually pretty easy. But to my Montreal family and friends, it was as close to being dead to them as possible. Yeah. So cold called the Maple Leafs, and they said they were not going to hire you because you have no experience. You have a great story, but you cold call all these companies. Maybe you should just work in sales and learn the business. Which I initially laughed off because I just spent years hustling my way through law school, wrote the bar, passed it, fully certified lawyer, and decided, I'm just going to put that on hold and work in sales for the Maple Leafs. And I came here for a $13 an hour job to sell tickets for the Raptors and Maple Leafs. And I constantly pestered the legal department for an opportunity, and they entertained it but didn't do anything. And then there was an opening. And I applied and initially didn't get it because they said they need to hire a 7th or 8th year lawyer. And I made a deal with the legal department and the sales department. Let me do this excess legal work that's been building up since you've been shorthanded. Let me do this for free. I could do this one day a week or nights and weekends, whatever it takes. And if you hire me, I'd be able to hit the ground running. And if you don't hire me and you hire someone else, you would have made me very happy and they wouldn't be overwhelmed with all the excess work that's now disappeared.
It's win-win.
Win-win. It's my best sales tactic. And they accepted. And I did this for months until they hired me full-time legal counsel at MLSE. And at the time, I was the youngest lawyer in the NHL and the NBA. And it was like, I can't believe this job. From a LinkedIn perspective, I had the coolest sounding job from a sports lawyer, and then yet felt a little bit unfulfilled. I mean, the MLSE is an amazing company. The people that work there are unbelievable. And I'm so grateful that I wasn't giving it my all. And I kind of realized after more reflection, I need a job where I feel like I'm helping people and there's a sales component to it. I love dealing with people. And when you work as a lawyer for a company, you're dealing with the internal people, but you have no clients, can't get clients. And I happened to work on HBO Leafs documentary for the Winter Classic. And that was my first exposure to film and television. And I fell in love with it. Did some work in terms of research and figured out sports law is difficult to quantify. There's not a lot of sports law firms, certainly none in Canada. I have this great training, but entertainment law is a real thing. There's entertainment law boutiques, there's large firms that do it. And I just started meeting as many people as I could to learn about the business. And I met someone named Eric Bernberg, who's one of the creators of and founders of Louis Bernberg Hannett. It's one of the boutique law firms in entertainment. And he gave me a chance, and I'm forever grateful to him. And I worked for him for about 6.5 years. And it was a tremendous experience, just doing entertainment law, mostly film and television, representing some influencers along the way, some professional athletes in sports still carries, followed me through to this part of my career, and built up a great practice until one day, about 3.5 years ago, a large firm we're 180-ish lawyers, Blaney McMurtry, that used to have a presence in sports entertainment, lost it a couple of years ago and is looking to basically reclaim it, and gave me an opportunity to come in as a partner, head up their sports and entertainment practice, and build it as big and as high as I can as I can do it. And I've been there ever since, and it's been amazing. So, which leads me to like what I do now. I mostly represent talent and filmmakers making feature films, A to Z, A to Z,
Hey.
whichever one, but anything that they need. I felt like I'm so passionate about the work that I do because I'm not a creative person. And I know that about me. I don't have this dream of making something for the last 10 years, but to align myself with people that do have those dreams and can't get to that finish line because whether it's they're so creative and they're lacking, true business knowledge, or obviously how could they possibly know all the legal ins and outs? Or they're just looking for that partner or need someone in any way in terms of my skills and experience. And I feel like that to help other people fulfill their dreams has been such a cliche thing to say, but it's actually how I feel. It's been really fulfilling for me.
It's not cliche at all. It's actually, I love the way you phrase that because the business side is so often overlooked. And also, you have individuals who are passionate about the industry, but to recognize there are so many moving pieces in creative, quote unquote, worlds that are not creative. Like by definition, it's not necessarily being the artist, the photographer, the filmmaker, the actor. They're so like if you look at a credits sheet, it's the reason you're sitting there for 5 minutes is you have an entire crew, not just crew being who's on set.
That's right.
It takes a village being another cliche. Cue that up.
It really does, though. It really does take a village.
Yeah. I want to go back on something you mentioned in your story because I think it's also so powerful to be able to carve your own path and make that journey. What did you say on the phone call to the Raiders? Like you really glazed over that to say, oh yeah, I just called them up, asked to speak to their legal team, demanded to speak to their legal team. Like how did that actually play out?
Well, it played out by they didn't pick up the phone right away. The great thing about the Raiders, and I'm always Raiders plug because I'm a huge fan, but they're a very controversial franchise for a variety of reasons and very polarizing. So they're always in the media. And as a result, I know every single member of the legal team by name, even just as a fan. No one else could name you legal counsel for the New York Giants or the Cincinnati Bengals. Nobody cares. But the Raiders are always in the media. So I knew I didn't just say head of legal. I actually referenced Jeff Buren, who's become a very close friend of mine. And now he's retired, but we speak almost 3-4 times a week, 10 years later. So 12 years later. So I actually left him a voicemail and did not expect to hear back. And then there was a law school event and I was out drinking and I got a 510 area code call, which I knew was Oakland because that's just how cool I am as a person. And I panicked. Like I could pick up this phone call. Chances are they'll never call me back, but I'm not in the right state of mind for this. I'm not at 100% capacity and this is my shot. So
right. What's game time decision?
I didn't take the call. I called the next day and he did pick up. And I basically explained to him, I'm very much aware, as much as a fan could be aware of the ins and outs of your franchise. I know this doesn't mean much, but I am a lifelong diehard fan. My school allows me to create an internship, which isn't entirely accurate. I figure I'll ask for forgiveness later. Allows me to create an internship. No money involved. I already have a place to stay nearby. Anything that you need at all. And I know that that's vague and ambiguous, but there's a reason this team's always in the media. Rightfully or wrongfully, you are. And I'd imagine you have some sort of internship program. If there's anything that I can do to help, it would be my lifelong dream. And I know that I'd be of service. And we went back and forth. And then I had a third phone interview with him and the first female president in sports, Amy Trask, who is now retired, but also a legend in her own right. She was on this phone call, and Friday, they can only have the time, they can only schedule this call when it's a Friday night on Eastern time, and I'm driving in a snowstorm in a full car from Ottawa to Montreal, and I have 3 of my friends in the back, and
it's
my
the most
wife's
peaceful environment, of course.
Yeah, and I'm doing it on like those douchebag jawbone. You know those ones? And I'm driving manual in a snowstorm. And I'm like, this is my test. And went back and forth. And my friends were kind of joking in the back. I'm like, if you cost me this opportunity, like I'll
veer this car into the ditch.
Exactly. I'm devastating. And it ended up going really well. And then he basically told me on the phone that I had the job. And I started to almost talk myself out of it. Are you sure? Because this is amazing, but I will book my flights. And I just want to make sure this is real. You have everyone else. You have 7 other interns from Harvard and Cornell, and then me from Canada, where you probably can point to on a map. Are you sure this is real? I couldn't stop myself. It was just coming out. I just had to say these things. And he said, we get thousands of applicants every year, as you can imagine. I've been here as legal counsel since 1981. You're the only person that's ever called me. And I think from then on, I'm not suggesting that in 2023, nobody cold calls, but at that time, I knew that I was onto something. And I think what the biggest message was for me was there's not one way to do something, and in law school where everyone's getting these top jobs in law because their grades are great, and maybe they don't present themselves in the same way that I would. Maybe they wouldn't or couldn't cold call someone. They couldn't deal with the rejection or the nerves. Like, that's my skill set. That's my strength.
I love that you closed the deal on the phone, though.
Thank you.
While confirming,
yes,
this is your legal, I'm getting a verbal commitment at this moment.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah. If I would have been too aggressive and say I need this in writing, that could have cost me. So, because I'm a nobody now, and I was definitely a nobody then. So it was really amazing to kind of to lock that down. But I agree. I mean, you don't want to harass and be overly aggressive. It's hard to boost yourself up. But I know myself. I know that I'm a genuine good person, and I try to convey this. I try to convey myself as being very authentic on a call and really listen a lot more than I talk. I mean, this is a podcast. I'm going to be doing a lot of talking, but generally, you can't help people unless you know how they need to be helped. I mean, you need to really listen to people. And I think just saying, I can do this, it's important to also open it up. Like, if I'm going to be a value add to you, I need to know in what way. What is it that you do? What do you need? And maybe I'm not the right fit for you, but listening is like a really overlooked part of what we do.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like you're going to be a resident featured guest on this show because there's
I hope so. Yeah.
I do want to make sure we get to the main topic because again, we can chat for 1,000 years. I have questions about your life itself. Should only biometrics actually allow us to do that? But this is good old ADHD tangents.
I love it.
I've been training with my therapist on how to bring it back to the original thought. It's slowly working.
You have to do your own how-to episode.
Yeah. Just interview myself on the other side and just hear how crazy I sound.
Somehow I feel like that would be great. Yeah.
To everyone's detriment.
Right.
A to Z/Z. Mm-hmm. There's no one way about producing a film or TV series, but there are paths that currently exist. So since this is kind of going to be the high level overview, can you please provide us with a description of what I'm cautious to say traditional ways of getting a film funded, made, everything?
Sure.
Because there is no traditional way. You know what I mean?
There's no traditional way. I totally agree with you. I will say, for the purposes of simplicity, maybe we separate film and television series.
Completely different beasts.
Not just from a budgetary standpoint, but I think just generally before we get into the details, you can make a film without certain partners attached and then hope to sell it. Hence the need for film festivals. Whereas you don't make a television series and say, who wants to put it on your network? Like, the parties are involved from day one. The parameters are different. The budgets are typically different. So maybe we'll limit this to independent feature films because it's possible, and I see it every day, independent filmmakers with little to no experience make a movie, but it is close to impossible for one of those producers to just make a high budget television series with no experience. And it's very difficult to do. So I think we should focus on feature films, if that's okay.
This is true, especially now with anyone having a cell phone.
Yeah.
You can make a film. The restrictions of getting there, difference of quality is a different story. But if you have good storytelling, you can go out and make it and having that accessibility. So yes.
How do you make a movie?
How do you make a movie?
Great question. So we'll focus on independent films, and even depending on the budget of the film, it's going to look a little bit different. As you mentioned, there is no traditional. I totally agree with that. A budget of like a sub $2 million film will look a little bit different than like a 2 to 5. So first, you need an idea. I mean, I think that people always talk about like, how do you get financiers? Like, no one's interested in anything you have to say unless you have a good story. So some producers that I represent, some production companies, which again, for as an asterisk, production companies could be 1 to 2 person run companies. Like I represent a ton of them. I can represent someone that shares a 1-bedroom apartment with 2 other people, yet they have 11 companies. So I think when I say production companies, they assume it's suit and tie or formal or like brick and mortar location. It's not.
Like the
I
picture
represent
studio,
creators.
quote unquote.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, studios, almost to some degree doesn't exist in Canada the way that it does in the US. So first you need an idea. Some producers that I represent have those ideas. They partner up with a writer or maybe a writer-director, and then they'll be the producer. Then they incorporate a production company. And I walk them through the process of incorporating the company with the right share structure and everything like that. And then I'll look to draft chain of title documents to reflect ownership from the individual screenwriter or whoever developed the concept or the materials, transferring those rights from themselves as individuals to this company. Because a company can't make it unless they actually own the ideas or have the rights to a certain idea. So sometimes they come to me where they already have that idea in hand, or they partnered up with someone and they need someone to crystallize that or formalize in the form of like proper contracts, which is what I would do.
And to jump in there, why is it important that it lives within a company versus an individual? Like to really emphasize that.
It's a great question. So anyone that wants to make anything should look to create a production company for a variety of reasons. Number one, a company in Canada provides limited liability. So in the event that you accidentally, some people on purpose, but accidentally take a misstep at any point, intellectual property is very fragile. If someone helped you develop the concept with you and they're not compensated, or you captured a Nike logo on screen and you didn't get permission, anything like that. And making a movie, you're going to take all sorts of risks. You're filming a location. Did you have a location release? Any issue that comes up, if you sign and engage all these people personally and you have a misstep and it results in a lawsuit, they can sue you. If they sue you for $1 million, even if you have $11.50 in your bank, they will remain attached to you in the event of a successful lawsuit until that $1 million debt is paid. And that could be in the form of liens on your property. They will be attached to you. It's going to impact your credit score, your ability to take jobs. It's a nightmare. A company allows limited liability, which means that your liability is limited only to the value of the assets of your company. So if you only have $11.50 in your bank and you own the film, maybe they take the rights to your film, but they can't chase you personally unless they're successful in piercing the corporate veil, which is a legal term. That's a topic for another day, season 2. So number one, limited liability. Number two, there's significant tax advantages to doing so. And also number 3, you're eligible for tax credits. One of the caveats is the applicant needs to be a Canadian controlled company in order to get, federal and provincial tax credits, which is why people film here. It's a big component to your budget, which we'll get to the financing in a sec. Mm-hmm. So those are just the 3 main reasons, but there's a few others as well. So always look to incorporate a production company. And you need to have contracts in place because in Canada, copyright is automatic. So if I painted a picture, I don't need to register it if I don't want to. If I painted the picture, I automatically own it. But companies can't be the author of a work unless it's expressly granted in the form of a contract. A company can't make something creative. An individual can. So if I wrote a script, I own the script. I have to expressly transfer my rights. I am giving the script to Lauren Howe's production company. They're paying me, and in exchange, I'm granting and transferring all my rights, ownership rights, into my work to that company. Which is basically, if you look at it like you're building a house, these are the foundational bricks, and you're going to be hiring, even if it's a $1 million, $2 million film, $500,000, $100,000, you're going to be engaging dozens of people, crew members, obviously people caught on camera, cast, anyone else that works on this project will be contributing something creatively. So you have the underlying work now. You now own the screenplay. You own the pitch materials, everything like that. Anyone else that works on it, be it an actor or anything like that, they're going to be transferring their ownership of their work to you. So you're basically putting brick by brick until you own essentially the whole house.
And even the same goes for, let's say you're doing documentary, where your budget is going to be a fraction of the price. Like you're still getting people on camera. You're still going to need a few other individuals, unless you are a completely independent individual.
That's right.
It's still just, it's good practice.
It's good practice. Documentaries is sometimes, to some degree, a different beast because there's certain rights where you can't obtain. Like, yes, if you're doing a story about someone's life, you're going to want to obtain their life rights. Even if they didn't write a script, they're caught on camera or you're talking about them. But if you're doing something a little bit more controversial or polarizing, like you're talking about a serial killer, you may not knock on their door and ask their family member to sign agreements because they may not grant you those rights, right? They're going to have no editorial rights. You could be, completely on one side of the equation. You could be saying all these negative things about a family member. They may not want this. So there's some exemptions to obtaining certain rights, which in Canada is known as the fair dealing test. It's a hard threshold to reach. In the US is known as fair use, but there are some situations where you can't or you elect not to obtain rights, and it's still going to be fine legally to some degree. That's very fundamental response to it. But setting that aside, yes. Season two. Very good practice to obtain rights. And not only that, but once you make a project or throughout the course of production or pre-production, you might have interest in a buyer, be it a streaming platform like Netflix or Paramount Plus or Apple or another major player. They're going to, even if, again, they love the story or the film's made and they fall in love with it and they want to acquire it or license it to put on their platform, it's going to be contingent on you delivering not just the film and all the technical aspects, but the legal delivery. They don't know you. They don't know the story. They've seen it. They love it. But they need to make sure that you're protecting them legally. You're going to indemnify them in the event of a lawsuit, and that you have all intellectual property rights. You have all the releases, this and that. Because if you don't obtain a release from Nike and Netflix is going to it's a big risk for them. What if they're exploiting this project? What if they're exploiting the production on their platform throughout the world and Nike gets wind of it? Nike might sue you, but they're also going to sue Netflix, obviously, and they don't want to take that risk.
Any parties involved.
So legally, you have to have those boxes checked.
Now, you've incorporated your company, you have the production company, you want to start shooting, you have the idea, you transfer the rights to your company. Now what?
Yes. One more quick anecdote before it, but we talked about the scenario in which they already partner up for the IP. Sometimes producers just want good content and they don't have the idea. So if I'm representing them, we'd propose sending out a shopping agreement or most likely an option agreement in Canada to the actual idea owner where they chop it around. It's confusing because they would be shopping it around, but it is in the form of an option agreement. You pay a small fee, shop it around for a few years, develop it with them potentially. And if there's legitimate interest from these, which kind of brings me into financing, you can't make a movie without money. So you need money. So
you took the words out of my mouth.
There you go.
How do you pay for it?
How do you pay for it? So in a lot of cases, they will look to pitch it around to financiers. That could be private investors, family and friends, people that have money. It can be most likely the first stop, the ideal stop would be streaming platforms, because those in more than 90% of cases now, they're the buyers. Maybe they'll reach out to distributors, both in Canada and the United States, the two major markets here, looking to finance together along with government agencies, companies, Telefilm, Ontario Creates, CMF. These are great funding opportunities for independent filmmakers. And then you can fill out the rest of the budget in the form of tax credits. There are some creative tactics as well, but that's the gist of it. You have most projects under $2-3 million have a combination of private investment, Telefilm, Ontario Creates, so CMF, and tax credits. That's typically how you make up the budget. So for Telefilm, CMF, Ontario Creates, there's various funding envelopes. You apply by certain deadlines. Again, there's a long list of criteria in terms of what you have to do to apply, but anyone can. These are significant and invaluable resources for Canadians to film and finance their operation, their project. So I think, and having tax credits all but guaranteed is, I think, extremely helpful. There's additional tax credit incentives, such as if you film in Northern Ontario, the NOHFC fund, very advantageous if you can apply, very competitive. There's also regional bonuses if you're filming in Toronto, but maybe outside the GTA. There's some additional bonuses there. So there's creative ways to look to finance. Unfortunately, while the dream scenario is to pitch to streamers, they're not it's unlikely for them to take your call as a first or second time filmmaker. You might get your project on Prime Video or Paramount Plus or Hulu or Peacock or Netflix or Apple, but it may be in the form of like a second or third window license deal. It wouldn't be right off the bat. They may not be involved on the ground floor to fund your project.
So actually, I love that, because how do you establish trust? If you're on the ground floor, you're looking for financiers.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, when you have a reputation, a portfolio behind you, it becomes a different story. But for the ones that are looking to get started, where do you establish trust and gain experience?
You don't need to. The great thing about the financing scenarios here is it's to some degree accessible to first and second time filmmakers, because to obtain a certain level of trust by a streamer to finance it is very different. But if you're applying to Telefilm and you have a good story and you have a Canadian controlled company and it's going to be Canadian content in terms of the requirements and criteria, and you get Telefilm funding, you get Ontario Creates, you get you pitch this to CBC, which again, they're one of many broadcasters that will look at your content as a content first, from a content first perspective, rather than who you are and how reputable are you. You won't get rich off their licensing deals, mind you, but it's something. And then all of a sudden, and you factor in tax credits, all of a sudden you're almost fully financed depending on the situation. You get maybe some family and friends money, or you do, I don't want to suggest like an Indiegogo campaign, but you're already pretty close just by applying to certain things. So it's not so much about establishing trust. I know plenty of first-time filmmakers that get these types of grants and financial opportunities. I will say, in addition and further to that, Telefilm has a talent to watch program where they take the 30 or 40 best or most promising applicants as first-time filmmakers, and they'll give them, roughly $250,000 to finance a feature film. And I sometimes speak at their Telefilm Talent to Watch Summit, and I represent a lot of these filmmakers, and I think it's wonderful that they do that. That we need more opportunities like that, because how can you have this great idea, be at the ground level, assemble a crew, gain trust with all these streamers? It's impossible. So this basically allows you to potentially finance your production without having those contacts,
And while we're on the financing front, I do want to make sure we discuss this. I had a filmmaker once say to me, and I've heard it more often than I would like to have heard this, of individuals looking for private financing, and they go, no, just find rich people and have them give you money because they just want to be affiliated with the arts. And I'm like, the business side of me is like that, and back to this bridging the gap of like creative and business. It's like any other investment. How are you going to show a return on that investment down the road? But I could be corrected. Am I wrong that maybe that is a path for some filmmakers? I personally am uncomfortable with that approach, but the fact I hear it quite frequently, I want to dispel any potential myths or misconceptions.
Sure.
And identify, how do people get a return on their film as well?
I think it's a really good question. I'm glad you brought that up, because I kind of sidestepped it a little bit when I talked about the traditional finance plan of maybe you have some family and friends money. That could be a very small component. It could be a non-existing component of your budget, or it could be someone who fully finances your project. Now, to unpack that a little bit, I don't know that any producer should be looking to get into a partnership with someone that they don't feel comfortable with, or even just the underlying parameters of a relationship that they're not comfortable with. I don't think it's worth it. Sometimes producers take the money. Now, I think as a lawyer, I structure it in a certain way. So when you talk about ROI, whether it's some rich person that has money that wants to be affiliated with the arts, I mean, it's not the keenest investment, and whether they are fully aware of it or not. It's their job to obtain legal advice, and I encourage them to do it.
I'm smiling.
It's a risky investment.
Film isn't a sound investment.
The same way that cannabis is a risky investment too. And I think there's definitely the good thing that filmmakers have in their back pocket, if they do want these types of investment, is they have the appeal of the industry. People do want to be affiliated potentially. I'm sometimes not brought in those conversations in terms of why they're investing, but they come to me with a potential investor, and I walk them through what that structure is, which is typically we'll issue them certain non-voting shares so that they can actually own part of the single purpose production company, and they're going to be repaid from profits from the film. So a loan, for example, is someone gives you money with interest and you have to pay them back by a certain date. A film may not make that money back. You may, as a filmmaker, you may never have that money back to pay, or you have no idea when you're going to have it back. So I would be very hesitant to agree to loans where there's a specific payment, otherwise specific repayment date, a maturity date, otherwise you're in default. I always push them in the way of an investment. So they investor invests in the project $100,000 or $500,000. They get back that amount of money out of the waterfall in terms of from profits from the film. So the film is exploited whenever that is. It could be 2 months after post-production. It could be right after a film festival. When money starts coming in, we have a waterfall that's customary in this industry. Collection account managers take their fee up the top, and then you have distributors, sales agents, they take their fees and expenses. If there's certain union or guild residuals or royalties, they get paid their cut, and then it goes to investors. So they would recoup their investment in full, and we would basically redeem their shares. They get their money back. But frankly, nobody invests so that they can get their money back. They do it for upside, the return, the ROI. So then we'll also issue them profit participation shares. So once it goes to the end of the waterfall and there's actual money left over, once everyone's been repaid and all debts have been basically satisfied, then they'll get, potentially a few percentage points, 5%, 10% of profits, net profits down the waterfall in which they would be entitled to upside. And that goes on forever. So there is upside, absolutely. They have to trust that the filmmaker, the production company knows what they're doing and knows how to sell it, and that the film is obviously good. If it's not good, it's hard to make money.
Or you're passionate about the concept, the idea, which is another, this conversation is geared towards the filmmaker side. Mm-hmm. If there is someone who is interested in investing in a project, these are also the questions to ask and to ensure that this filmmaker's there versus just being passionate about the story.
Agreed. And this is also sales 101. If you're getting someone to basically consider paying you as an investor, you have to understand why it is. I mean, are they doing it to get rich? Are they doing it because they do love the arts? And if they do, and they're a little bit resistant, there are some ways in which you can make this more enticing for them to consider. That could be potentially an executive producer credit, maybe access to a premiere at a film festival or the world premiere, give them tickets. There's other things that you can do to basically further incentivize them to really consider it. Mm-hmm. We have that. If they're interested in investing due to the allure, just the excitement of the industry, then play on that a little bit. And that's not to manipulate them; it's to give them what they're asking for.
Right.
You can offer these things without any major concessions on your end, and I think it'd be greatly appreciated. Some people love that.
And going all the way back to win-win.
Yeah.
Getting crystal clear about why people are getting involved in the project in whatever capacity.
That's right. So I'd say kind of continuing the A to Z path.
I was like, you're
getting money. We're at A to B and a half. Once you're fully financed, then you need to start focusing on your attachments. Which talent are you going to get? Typically, you look to lock up your writer, producers, director, in the form of agreements, which I obviously help and facilitate and prepare those and negotiate those with, if the director's very reputable or a certain producer or executive producer, whether it be locally or someone from LA. Certainly in the executive producer side, a lot of people do that. They open doors. They understand the way that this is made. They understand how to sell it and market it. So that's invaluable. So to bring someone like them on board, sometimes have to negotiate with their agents or their managers, sometimes them directly, and I paper those deals. And then you look to obviously actors, who you're going to bring on. They could be, non-union or guild. They can be Canadian ACTRA members. They could be US SAG members that you can get to come here under certain process called Global Rule 1, in which I would negotiate with their agents, paper those deals, and basically lock them up under contracts that we feel is mutually beneficial. Sometimes these negotiations are super smooth. Sometimes they are the exact opposite, but that's why I'm here. And I think also just not only due to my experience and understanding from a composure standpoint and industry terms and what to push for and understanding how they're going to push back on certain things, but also to create a bit of a buffer between the producer, my client, and the actor. I mean, you don't want there to be any friction if you're paying someone a small fortune to come down here and shoot your movie. You want the relationship to be amazing.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
I got that advice early in my career is like, be aware of when you need to play bad cop.
Yeah.
And when that's going to hinder it, that you should have someone else playing that role, especially negotiations.
I agree. That's not always my demeanor, but in a very simplistic way, yeah. I mean, I do have to be that bad cop, and I want to be for my client, but obviously
That's a fair
the goal
point.
is
It's not demeanor based,
yeah.
but it's,
No, but
there's going to be difficult
it's the right term to
conversations.
use. Yeah, it's the right term to use for sure. For sure. But obviously the goal is to do everything collaboratively and to work with them, because if they push too hard, they know that people are word gets around, and you're not going to, producers in this country are going to think twice about trying to engage them. So that's just small tip for the other side.
Hint, hint.
Hint, hint.
Subtle.
So you're getting people on board, and then you're looking at crew. It could be lighting, a gaffer, like, key grip, anyone that's involved, makeup artist, costume designer, wardrobe. I would be preparing crew deal memos. Sometimes if these people are well established, they have their agents and they push back on some things, but it's my goal to get them out, as well as all the releases that they're going to need to film in locations, inside and outside of locations, to capture a scene where there's brands, logos, there's artwork, there's photographs of family members in the back. Like, all of this needs the necessary rights and permissions, and that's my job to help them obtain it. If it's a more reputable, like $5 million plus budget, they'll typically have like a clearance supervisor, clearance coordinator that will work with me. Their job, which is amazing, is like tracking down the owners of everyone and basically just liaising. And, if there's a layup for me, great. And if it's a shrewd negotiation, at least I have them on the ground, because as a lawyer, you're paying an hourly rate. It's costly it's not our job to track it down. So I think having someone on board is great, but I've certainly played that role where I help them obtain the rights and then negotiate them. And everything in between, like clearance standpoint, reviewing the scripts, the script clearance report, the title report, making sure that you have the right to use the title, any issues in the script, referencing real people or characters, referencing previous movies or music, which again, music rights, what music you're going to use. I would negotiate and draft these agreements. It could be a composer to do a brand new score where production company owns the rights. It could also be a combination of that and popular music, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, that their publishing rights are owned by a certain publishing entity, and the master recording rights would be owned potentially by a separate entity, by the record label. So I have to negotiate multiple and reciprocal deals to get the music rights, everything that you need, and then basically wrap it up with a bow in terms of insurance, E&O insurance that you're going to need to basically complete the package that you're going to need throughout production. So that's just not quite Zed. Zed would be, how the hell do I exploit this film that I've now made?
It's done.
It's done.
Where does it go?
Sub $2-3 million, where you're basically, your finance plan doesn't have major distributors attached.
Right.
You have Telefilm, Ontario Crates, CMF, tax credits, maybe family and friends money. Maybe you have CBC or an equivalent to give you a small license fee where they'll have it on their platform, either as traditional broadcasting or through like CBC Gem, maybe Crave. Maybe you have these obligations already, which they're going to help facilitate. But even if they paid for it, they don't have all the rights.
Mm-hmm.
They just have like first window under certain, like maybe they just have, digital rights. But maybe you still have a theatrical window, or maybe, so if you don't have, it's really about filling in those blanks. Chances are, if you do not have any of these parties attached, you just have finance and you don't have like distribution or exploitation deals, the best way to basically market it would probably be film festivals. Try to get into a film festival, which TIFF is a little bit misleading, because there's a bunch of fans lined up to see Stars, maybe not this year, and they're in attendance. But out of all the top tier film festivals, TIFF is the only one where fans are actually allowed to attend. Usually it's the purpose of a film festival is a film is made and it's independent. It doesn't yet have exploitation partners. It doesn't have streaming attachments. It's not backed by a studio. So once your film's in a film festival, the people in attendance are basically buyers. It's like a silent auction, basically. So you have streaming representatives of streaming platforms. You have representatives of distributors, sales agents, looking to partner up and bid on your project once they see it in the theater. So that's a great way. If you don't have these partners and they don't take your meetings, you have the movie already. You don't have to tell them about them. You don't have to give them an elevator pitch. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm working on. Like, think about it. Imagine me going to a major buyer and say, I have this great idea for a painting. I haven't made it yet. Interested?
Yeah.
Much harder than look at this painting.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
good, right? So I think having something concrete, a definitive piece of work that they can see is going to be a lot more helpful. It doesn't matter about me and my sales tactics. I could be the greatest showman or salesman on earth, but it's about the project. And so to go to a film festival, for it to be accepted in a film festival, for you to have all your legal I's dotted and T's crossed is significant. It gives you an air of legitimacy that maybe you didn't think you had before then. So film festivals is a great route. If you don't get into film festivals, I would do film festivals while simultaneously trying to reach out to a sales agent. It's not your job to pitch your own project. You should be looking to distributors or sales agents to actually sell your project in Canada and around the world. And when I say sell it, there's many countries. You could sell all of them at once or piecemeal. There's different rights. Ideally theatrical first, because most money is still in the box office in most major countries around the world. And then that's first window. You have it basically hitting theaters exclusively. And then you have a combination of, DVD manufacturing, electronic sell-through, buy it or rent it on Amazon or whatever. And then, you could do airlines, transportation, hotels, motels, a combination of different rights. And then ultimately at a streamer, because frankly, once it goes to Netflix, no one's going to buy the DVD unless your special features are insane, but chances are no one's buying it. So you have to focus on streaming platform. I know the allure of, my movie is on Netflix is great, very valuable. But ideally, financially, that should be the last stop, unless they're willing to pay a significant amount upfront to get the first and second and third windows or whatever.
Are you able to share any insight into streaming's disrupted this industry?
Yeah.
I'm looking at your facial expression right now going, oh God, which way is she going with this?
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
You hear so many myths about how deals or how much people are getting paid, especially for the streaming deals.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any insight onto like a broad range of what people can and should expect or how those are structured? Especially like this is a huge component of the SAG and WGA strikes.
It is. Yeah.
Residuals.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So most streaming services do not offer residuals, which is the reason why a lot of individuals, be it writers or top tier actors, work on projects is in 99% of circumstances, unless you're talking about like the Hollywood elite, they're not getting rich for their fees to do the work, right? Like a writer could be, even if you're, in Canada, like a WGC writer, even if you're getting like 60, 70K for a script, it might take you a couple of years to write it or a full year to write it. And 60, 70K is great. But to live and to flourish, there's the other incentives, the bonuses, the back end. So if writers and actors often get paid a percentage of net profits, same way that an investor would as well. The problem is those profits come from every time in traditional television, every time a show is made and aired every time a show is aired on a certain channel, for example, with advertising revenue, it's quantifiable. This is how much money there is in terms of profits, all the way down the waterfall. This is how much this actor gets. This is how much this writer gets. Every time Seinfeld is shown, every time Friends is shown, that's more and more money, royalties, residuals that these individuals get. So the money keeps coming. The upside is there. Streaming platforms don't show their data and algorithm. If one person saw your movie or 10 million people saw your movie, there's no back end. So it all comes down to what they're willing to pay up front. Now, when you talk about a structure, there's only two real structures. They're either acquiring the rights or they're licensing the rights. If they're acquiring the rights, that means they own the IP. They own the project, meaning that if Netflix acquires the rights, it can't be on any other platform. It can't be, they're going to decide what they're going to do. If they decide to do merchandising or a sequel or a prequel, they own the rights now.
In perpetuity?
In perpetuity. They bought it from the producers. So with that comes, an acquisition fee is typically much higher because you're not just getting the rights to show it on your platform, you're owning it. You're controlling the universe. That's also another hesitation point of independent filmmakers pitching it, because even if it's a good concept, even if you can get those meetings, they're going to say, yeah, well, we'll just buy it from you. We'll turn it into a Netflix original. Like, we love the idea, but we don't know you. We don't trust that you are going to make it, and we're just going to sit here and hope it's good. We're going to infiltrate this process. Like, we will turn this into a Netflix original. We might keep you on, that person on, and pay you based out of the budget, which is great. but we need to own it. We need to have decision-making authority with respect to how it's going to be made. It'd be great. Our production team could make this, or we have connections to that studio, that production company that can make this for us. We're going to use our post-production team. So they will take over.
And even in that case, just to jump in there, is because you and I have talked about this offline. Mm-hmm. You actually are signing NDAs as the person walking in and pitching and saying, oh, hey, there's a clause that says we may already have an idea in production that's similar to yours because we get pitched all the time. And I'm not being like, for legal purposes, I am not accusing anybody of anything, but it is a fair reality of why you have to sign those things going into the pitch meetings that like you may not be asked, yeah, we'll buy it from you. There is a chance, no matter who you're pitching. I don't know. You course correct me here.
No, you're absolutely right. Instead of an NDA, they basically refer to it as a submissions policy or a submissions release. You do know that we get pitched 10,000 projects a year. Plus, we may have our own team that's developing concepts. Year in, year out, it's very possible that we make a movie with another main character named Doug who has these, emotional and character traits. Or maybe we may be making a TV series with a similar plot and premise. You forego your right to sue. And I don't suspect, sometimes I'm a little bit naive in it, I don't suspect that they have ideas to steal projects. Like no one has been put in that situation under my care, like my client base. It just hasn't happened to them. And I would make sure that it never happens to them. But yes, they do have to sign those releases. So there is that risk that, just so you know, it's possible that 7 years from now, you might see something on Netflix that you eventually
similar
pitch.
enough.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
I'm not suspecting any foul play. I really am not.
No.
But that's a risk that people take, even if it doesn't happen. It's still, they do have to sign a submissions policy. And if I was legal counsel to Netflix, I'd be urging them to do it as well.
Absolutely.
It's way too risky otherwise. It's just too much volume.
There are only so many stories that can be told that are like adjacent to each other that it absolutely makes sense. So that's good to kind of dispel the myth of like, oh, don't be afraid of pitching.
Yes.
But if you do see something down the road, don't assume it was necessarily.
That's right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think that that's the correct response to it. Now, I think back to...
Sorry, tangent. Thank you.
No, anytime. I think just to go back to it, there's two structures really. There's the acquisition, which they're going to own it. And then there's a license deal. It could be exclusive license for the first year because it's going to go straight to Netflix exclusively, no other platform for 2 years. It could also be a non-exclusive license deal in the third window. So, after a year, after it's been exploited, whatever, sure, we'll take it. I mean, we'll take it and it's non-exclusive. So you can also put it on Amazon if you like. So depending on exclusivity, depending on the timing, depending on if it's first window or second window or later, depending on obviously the caliber of the project, the budget, how they think it's going to help them from a business standpoint, depending on if it's a license or acquisition, the range of upfront fees is unlimited. Honestly, like I would love to answer that question and say it's between 100 and 600K, but all of these terms are completely dependent. If it's a, if it's a second window license deal and it's exclusive, you might be looking at a couple 100K. But again, you're also by territory. Is it going to be US? Is it going to be North America? Depending on the territory or territories, they're paying for more. Worldwide, it's going to be more because now you can't sell it at these other territories. You've just now sold it to one. So just like standard commerce, it's going to go depending on how much they're asking for. It's going to cost more from their end. What people try to do in anticipation of the strike for at least a year and a half is offer writers and, potentially showrunners in television series and actors a streaming bonus or a series sale bonus. Let's just stick to streaming bonus. But in the event that it's acquired by a streaming service, because they know they're not going to get residuals, they will pay you, an upfront fee of an additional upfront fee. It could be 20K, it could be 40K, 50K, depending on the budget. But that's you're foregoing your right to get royalties. I mean, obviously an actor is not going to have any approval rights to like nix a deal. So you have no choice but to go along for the ride, but at least it's a consolation. You'll get some money up front, but don't expect royalties.
Right.
But it's been brewing to this moment. The music industry figured it out almost right away in terms of residuals and royalties and it's much more convoluted because for every musical track, there's a composition, which has its own royalties and residuals. And then there's the master recording side, its own royalties and residuals. Every time one track is played on any of these music platforms, there's some type of algorithm and data that's being disclosed, and agencies and organizations that are collecting royalties and paying them out. It's not a perfect system, but at least it exists. And here we are in film and television where it doesn't still. So that is certainly one of that is probably the major issue for the strikes. But now, while the strike exists, I should say, the WGA and SAG have certainly pushed additional terms. And the second biggest one is AI.
I feel like I'm opening Pandora's box right now.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is a separate hour special.
I hate AI.
And I do want to, like, we brought it up.
That's a separate special.
It's, oh God, I got to check your time when you have to be out the door, which ironically, we're technically over time.
I have a few more minutes. Yeah.
A few more minutes?
Yeah, for sure.
Headline of, to explain what is happening and why it's so critical that AI is also part of these strikes.
AI is evolving quicker than people that are not in AI had hoped. And there is a fear when an actor or a writer, let's just say for actors, for example, when they sign over the rights to use their services, we talked about IP, right? Intellectual property rights, and everyone's contributing creatively. So as a result, you're paying them. And in exchange, they're going to basically transfer or assign their ownership that they have to their IP ownership that they have to their work to you so that you can use it and exploit it.
Is that a fire alarm? Okay, third time's the charm.
Okay, AI. So actors, when they're basically performing their services as acting for a movie, they're getting paid. And as a result, they're transferring and assigning ownership of their IP to you, the production company. They're also waiving their moral rights, which is something that goes in every single contract, which basically states that they have for IP protection, Copyright Act, individuals that are transferring or signing ownership of their IP also have an additional right called moral rights, which is even if they transfer the rights, it's a further protective measure for them, which allows them to basically try to interfere with the work that's portrayed in a way that goes against their moral guidance or beliefs. So if you assign the rights to your services and all of a sudden you're re-editing and putting into like a porn and they're, deeply religious, they might try to interfere with it. Yes, I give you the rights, but I didn't waive my moral rights, and you're using it in a way that is, again, contrary to my, my moral compass or whatever. So again, more of a legal discussion, but legally speaking, as a production counsel, I always put in every single project, every contract, you have to have waiver of moral rights. Okay. So in addition to transferring of IP, you're also going to have the right to use their name, image, and likeness in connection with the film. So you could snip, behind the scenes footage or even a part of the movie to use in the trailer or to take a shot and put it in, for the poster art or any marketing promotional efforts. That's general and that's accepted. But now with AI, they can take dialogue, they could take someone's face or, entire body and basically move them in different situations and engage in conversations or action shots in which it wasn't even the actors doing. And that's where it becomes a little bit scary because they're like, yes, I gave you the IP to use me. I filmed 5 scenes. This is exactly it. Use it, cut it, modify it. That's cool. But don't take my image and create something else entirely without paying me. Like I didn't sign off on it. I have no idea what you're using that for. And people can create new footage and maybe it's its own thing. Hey, we have Brad Pitt's rights. Let's actually do a 5-minute short of him just, prank calling people. And he didn't film this, but we have his AI is basically modifying it using someone that looks exactly like him to do additional work. We don't even need him for the sequel. Let's just get AI. Maybe in 2 years from now, AI will have the capacity and evolve as quickly that it can actually create certain scenes, recreate certain scenes. So to do things without their permission to, which that could be, again, as ancillary rights in connection with the movie itself. So, different images for merchandising or audio for a hot take or, marketing promotional material, additional footage on social media, or it could be the right to create additional projects, sequels, prequels, like, we're going to do a sequel. We can't get a hold of him, but we can use AI to make him look 10 years younger and to create this scene. We'll just do that at no additional compensation. So they're concerned that AI is not being properly governed and managed. Being on the other side, and I just had a panel at Osgood with other entertainment lawyers who were just kind of joking, in front of everyone whoever comes up with the best AI clause, let's just trade notes here because we're in this together. This is uncharted territory. What clause would allow our producer to take certain rights? It's also allowed, permissible. So we're kind of waiting and seeing. Personally, AI scares the crap out of me. And I understand the actor's position. Like it's kind of terrifying.
It's interesting because I heard an argument that was made for why wouldn't an actor be for this if it means, say, hypothetically in a series, maybe you'll film 2 episodes and AI can complete the remaining 8. So you're going to do less work for more money. Why wouldn't you want that is the argument I've heard.
Great argument.
It's fair, except my bone to pick with it is it defeats the sense of purpose of why someone chooses to be in this industry. It's not about having your face plastered on a screen and you look, for some people, by all means, it absolutely is about ego. But for majority of individuals in a creative space, not just actors, I'll speak to the acting perspective, it is about the process. It's about human connection. It's about what's happening on set. Because what people don't see is that you may not be working 11 months out of the year, but you're 30, 60, maybe 90 days, if you're lucky, on set throughout the year. It comes from connection. And we are so preoccupied with, I can go on a soapbox about this, we are with hyper optimization and efficiency. That always isn't the best solution for human purpose.
It's really well said. I think you also are, I don't want to say unique in this sense. I always commend you for having a very strong and determined head on your shoulders. Like you have a strong moral compass, even the way that you articulated about being generally uncomfortable with a rich person financing a movie. It's not for me to tell you that that's right or that's wrong. I think you have to be authentic and honest with yourself. And so I understand that position and I agree with it. This one, I really agree with it. I would say, generally speaking, this industry with the volume of content that we have, sometimes it's led more creatively and sometimes it's met more from a business standpoint. I wouldn't judge an actor if they're so established or if they're not as creatively focused and they look at it more from a business lens and they say, they want to pay me to do it and I don't have to be on set. I could be interested in it. I wouldn't judge them or shame them for it. I think some people are really more creative and some people are more business. But I would say, so because of that, I don't believe that SAG and all of its members share the exact same view on AI. I have a view on AI. Every actor, if you line up 10 of them, they all have different takes on it. So SAG's position is not AI cannot exist in this industry. It's if you want the rights and you're paying for it, it has to be controlled and clearly articulated in the agreement. So, and again, subject to negotiation. One actor, if they're very creative, they just might say, yeah, it's great that it's now in our collective agreement, but I'm not doing AI. I don't want you doing AI. And that's absolutely fine. That's part of the negotiation. At the same time, in the same breath, sometimes talent, they want exclusive transportation on set. They don't want to sit next to anyone. It's not for me to say it's abysmal or it's ridiculous. It's for me to say, to push back if we can't afford it. But people have preferences. That could be a preference. But we're trying to find a way, we can't deny the emergence of AI. And I think the goal for SAG is to really successfully control it and at least set some minimum terms in this agreement. That's what these collective agreements are between, the WGA agreement, the SAG agreement. They're minimum terms. It's not, this is how it's going to be for every single engagement. It's that these are the minimum terms and standards in which the production companies, need to respect in terms of being able to engage them. You can't step on it. Minimum terms, if the actor doesn't want it, AI, then they're not going to agree to it. And you have to find someone else can make them agree to it. But again, people have different perspectives on it. And it's really about, unfortunately, we can't stop AI. It's coming and it's already here, frankly. And it's going to continue to evolve.
Yeah.
So I think just being able to set some parameters around how it can be used and restricted in this industry is of paramount importance.
Well, and it's better, like, if it is not positioned as being restricted, it's harder to roll back any allowances that are granted now, that it's just being precautionary. Because I agree, it's not necessarily, it's coming, please don't stick your head in the sand, learn about AI, know about what's coming in the industry, because this is the inevitable, dare I never get a sponsorship from them in the future, Kodak example.
That's right.
You don't think if it's no, digital film's never going to disrupt our industry. We're absolutely fine. Film will always be the way. Like,
Right.
be aware that changes may happen, what it could look like in the future.
Yes.
God, I've gone so over time with you today, Dave, that I want to be mindful and respectful of your time. You and I can talk for
a while.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why hence season 2, 3, 34, dare I be around this world that long, hopefully.
If you would love to have me back, I'd love to be back. And I think
course.
it's been such a great experience to chat about it. I think, when I talked about my passion, what I do, I think that also just extends not just to my clients, but and prospective clients, obviously, but just to people in the industry. Transparency and understanding, the nuances of these things. It's not that it doesn't resonate with people. It's just it's a black box and the doors are either closed or they feel closed to a lot of producers. Access to information is important. And I speak at a lot of, even film schools, institutions, because I'm trying to be able to clear a path in which they can gain knowledge, gain resources, look to build your team. You could be the greatest, most established producer in the universe. They all have access to resources, or they know how to get those access to those resources, be it hiring the right team members, obviously at some point bring on production counsel, business affairs, having a line producer who knows how to actually produce boots on the ground productions. So this is all part of making content. No one can do this alone. This isn't, I keep talking about a painter example. It's a horrible example in retrospect because one person can paint, right? It's just, so I think generally speaking, you have to find the resources and find the information. And if you don't know how to get to it, then find the person, bring them on board who will help bring this information resources to you.
I'm going to force a shameless plug tee up. Who are your clients and who should reach out to you if they have questions?
Sure. Production companies, that could be individual producers who want to set up a production company or establish production companies of any budget size. Also talent. Sometimes we talked about option agreement. How do you get the idea? Sometimes I represent screenwriters or script writers for television series, and a studio or a production company that I don't represent reaches out to them to acquire the rights or to send them a shopping agreement or an option agreement. So talent in this industry, writer, producer, actor, director, or a production company, that would make up the majority of my client base. I also do represent influencers and social media stars, and I do represent athletes just because I come from a professional sports world, and I do live event deals for sporting events. But in the context of what we're talking about, film and television, both sides of the table, to the extent that there's no conflict, I represent. And the thing is, the network for entertainment lawyers is small, but rock solid. When I started out, there were 12, 13 entertainment lawyers in private practice. Now there's about 25 to 35. I have a good relationship with most of them. And a lot of them are just fantastic. So if you reach out to me and there's a conflict, like, hey, I got this option deal from this company. Oops, I represent that company. It's no problem at all. Not only would I give you names, but I also refer and potentially introduce you to, some of my competitors, because we don't look at each other like that. This industry, what goes around comes around. You want to be a good person. There are really smart and knowledgeable entertainment lawyers besides myself, and I'd be happy to introduce you in the event that there's a conflict. But you have to find the right person, the right fit, personality.
Right.
So I think that that's important too. We all have different styles, our different approaches to things, but a lot of knowledgeable people. So.
And where can people find you and just kind of keep up with this stuff, especially as you share, like you post great stuff on LinkedIn. Where's the best place to kind of keep up with what you're working on?
I would say the worst place to find me is IMDb, because while I get credited for every movie and television series I work on, I am David Stern 28. And it's not even out of 28. It's out of like 39. My name is just so generic. That's on my parents. So don't find me on IMDb. I'm the head of the sports entertainment group at Blaney McMurtry. So BLANEY.com. You'll find my name there, on LinkedIn too. Hopefully I'm one of 700 David Sterns that you'll be able to find, but Dave Stern on Blaney would be the best way to find me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Dave, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been amazing.
Oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to the multiple following episodes. And you mentioned influencers, and real quick, like that's another conversation I want to have with you, is around what they should be looking out for in contracts when so many people are managing their own contracts, whether they're micro or big. Like why, A, you should have a lawyer in your corner. Shameless plug.
Yes, thank you.
But B, also, if you can't afford it yet, what do you look out for?
Yeah. And don't jump right into farting in jars on OnlyFans. Because I think that there's better ways.
Damn it.
There's
Damn
better
it.
ways. Yeah.
Well,
Don't you dare. Don't
that
you dare.
eliminates the conversation I
Yeah.
was just going to have with you when
That's
these
season
mics
2.
turn
That's
off.
season 2. Farting in jars, feed pics. No, but in all seriousness, I think that landscape requires a lengthy discussion.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's very fascinating and ever changing. And I'd be happy to talk about it.
Round 2.
Round 2.
Round 2.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Dave.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you don't mind, this is my Canadian self asking to like, share, leave a little review wherever you are listening to this podcast. That little bit of love goes a long way. Thank you for your time, for listening. And if you would like to hear a very specific how-to in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out.